There's a doctor in your city right now, late 30s, cardiologist, earns $400,000 a year, owns a beautiful house in the best school district, drives a leased Range Rover. His wife drives a leased Tesla, 2 kids in private school. The neighbors look at him and assume he's set for life. The waiter at his usual restaurant assumes he's a millionaire. His own parents probably assume he's a millionaire. Here's what his bank account actually looks like. His checking account, on the day before payday, sits at $640. His investment accounts, after 13 years of working, total about $90,000. He still owes $170,000 on student loans. He carries a small but persistent credit card balance that creeps up every month and gets knocked down with each paycheck and never quite goes away. If he loses his job tomorrow, his current lifestyle has roughly 6 weeks of runway before the entire thing collapses. He has earned, in cash, somewhere north of $3.5 million over his career. He has kept almost none of it. This is what financial professionals call Henry syndrome. High earner, not rich yet. And I want to be very specific about something. The not rich yet part is the biggest lie in modern personal finance. Because for most of these people, the yet never arrives. They are not on a delayed road to wealth. They are on a permanent treadmill that quietly converts the highest income brackets in America into the worst savings rates of any group except the literal poor. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how this trap closes. Why doctors are the perfect case study, even if you're not a doctor. The 3 specific spending decisions that destroy more high-earner wealth than every Starbucks latte ever sold combined. And the simple but counterintuitive strategy that lets a $400,000 earner actually become a millionaire instead of just looking like one. My name is Andy, and I spend way too much time digging into why high incomes so often produce the lowest savings rates, and why the math of becoming wealthy is the opposite of what most people assume. If that's the kind of analysis you want, hit subscribe. That's what Andy Explains Money is here for. Let me start with a graph I want you to picture in your head. 2 lines climbing a mountain. The first line is bright green. It represents your income. It starts modest, dips a little during training, then skyrockets vertically into the top 1%. That's the doctor's salary. The line is dramatic. The line is impressive. The line is the one everyone sees. But right next to it, almost touching it, is a red line. That's your spending. And the genuinely terrifying thing about high-income professions isn't that they don't make money. It's that the red line chases the green line with magnetic precision. As income jumps from $60,000 to $300,000, spending jumps to $299,000 almost overnight. The 2 lines move together, up and to the right, forever. Net worth lives in the tiny gap between those 2 lines. And when the gap stays narrow for a decade, you can earn $3 or $4 million and end up with a net worth that's mathematically indistinguishable from zero. The income was real. It just never converted into wealth, because spending devoured every additional dollar of it before the dollar had a chance to settle. You might not be a neurosurgeon. You might be an engineer, a lawyer, a software architect, a business owner, a sales executive, a finance professional. The mechanics of the trap are exactly the same. In fact, the higher your income potential, the harder this trap snaps shut. Because high earners have access to lifestyle upgrades that lower earners can't even consider, and every one of those upgrades comes with a contract attached to it. A high salary is supposed to be a shield against financial ruin. The data shows it often acts as an accelerant. It allows people to dig deeper holes faster, with more confidence, while telling themselves the income will eventually solve everything. The income never solves anything. The income is the bait that triggers the trap. There's a cultural assumption that becoming a doctor is a golden ticket. We see the title, we see the parking spot at the hospital. We assume wealth. But wealth and income are cousins, not twins. Income is what comes in. Wealth is what stays. And for the vast majority of physicians, very little stays. The White Coat Investor, a financial resource specifically focused on physicians, has documented that typical doctors earn anywhere from $150,000 to $500,000 a year. Squarely top tax brackets. Yet roughly a quarter of physicians have a net worth under $1 million, even after decades of working. That math is staggering when you sit with it. You can churn through $10 million of gross income over a career and end up with less than a tenth of that to show for the work. Where does the rest of the money go? The answer starts before they've even earned their first paycheck. Most people start their financial race at zero. Doctors start in a hole so deep you can't see daylight from the bottom of it. The median medical school debt for recent graduates is hovering around $200,000. Many specialists are looking at $300,000 or more. And these aren't interest-free loans. The debt accrues interest while the student is still in residency, working 80-hour weeks, earning maybe $60,000 a year before taxes, barely scraping by. By the time a physician becomes an attending, the moment the big paycheck finally arrives, they are technically insolvent. Their net worth is negative $200,000 to $300,000. They are in their early 30s. They have zero meaningful assets, massive liabilities, and they have lost the most powerful decade for compound interest in any human's investment timeline. A doctor at 32 has to mathematically sprint just to get back to the starting line where the plumber and the teacher started 10 years ago. The plumber and the teacher have a head start measured in tens of thousands of dollars in retirement accounts that have been quietly compounding the entire time the doctor was in school. The pressure to catch up creates a very dangerous psychological state, the state where the trap actually closes. Imagine spending your 20s inside a library or a hospital ward. You missed weddings, you skipped vacations, you ate cafeteria food while your friends from college bought houses, leased BMWs, took trips to Europe. You delayed gratification for an entire decade. Then the first real paycheck hits, maybe $20,000 in a single month, $40,000. The dam breaks. This isn't about greed, it's about relief. It's a psychological release valve. Behavioral economists have a name for it: pent-up deferred gratification. You feel you're owed a lifestyle. You tell yourself, I'm a doctor now, I should live like one. So instead of using that surge of income to aggressively fill the debt hole and build emergency reserves, the money gets diverted immediately to visible markers of success. The new car, the bigger apartment, the European vacation, the watch, the signaling. The reasoning feels sound in the moment. You worked harder than almost anyone you know. You suffered. You deserve the reward. But that emotional reaction is exactly what keeps the spending line glued to the income line for the next 30 years. You're trying to buy back the lost decade of your 20s using the income of your 30s. And every dollar spent that way is a dollar that doesn't compound, doesn't grow, doesn't build the freedom you actually wanted when you started medical school. The first step to fixing this is admitting that the hole exists. If you have negative net worth, you're not rich. You're a high-income poor person. That sounds harsh, but it's the necessary reframe. The protocol is to separate your identity from your bank balance. Just because you have an MD or a VP after your name does not mean you can afford the lifestyle associated with that title. Yet. The goal in the early stage is to live like a resident for 2 to 5 years after the big money starts. If you can hold your spending at $60,000 while making $300,000, that $250,000 wedge is what fills the hole. You exit residency. You catch back up to where the teacher was at 32, and then you get to start actually building wealth from a real starting line. But almost nobody does that. They let the lifestyle inflate instantly. And this is where we hit the most dangerous mechanism in the entire trap. If you think the student loans are the main problem, you're wrong. Loans are simple math. You can pay them off. The real killer is what happens to your fixed expenses the moment you sign that attending contract. There's a specific structural mechanism that locks high earners into a cycle of poverty despite earning in the top 1%. It isn't lattes. It isn't avocado toast. It's a structural trap that, once you sign on the dotted line, you literally cannot budget your way out of. We use the term lifestyle creep loosely, but let's define it technically. Lifestyle inflation is when your consumption rises in direct proportion to your income, ensuring your savings rate remains static or even declines as you earn more. For a normal earner, lifestyle creep means buying name-brand ketchup instead of generic. For a high earner, lifestyle creep means structural upgrades that come with multi-year contracts. We're talking about the jump from a rented apartment to a mortgage on a 4-bedroom house in the right school district. The jump from a 10-year-old Honda to a lease on a Tesla and a Range Rover. The jump from public school to private school for 2 kids. The jump from "we cook at home" to "we have a meal service plus eat out 4 nights a week." These aren't one-time purchases, they're new permanent baselines. Once you move into the bigger house, you have to furnish it. You have to heat and cool it. You have to landscape it. You have to fix what breaks. The spending line on our graph doesn't drift up. It teleports to a new level and locks in there. And the contracts you signed make it almost impossible to step back down without a huge financial penalty. Let me run real numbers. Dr. A lands a job paying $300,000 a year. After taxes, malpractice insurance, and benefits, his actual take-home is somewhere around $18,000 a month. That sounds enormous. Watch how fast it evaporates. Student loan repayment, $3,000 a month. Mortgage on the doctor's house plus property taxes, $6,000. 2 car leases, $1,500. Private school for 2 kids, $4,000. We haven't bought groceries, we haven't paid utilities, we haven't put $1 into investments. We've already spent $14,500. That leaves $3,500 for food, utilities, travel, clothing, and crucially, investing for retirement. His fixed expense line is sitting right below his income line with no margin. If he gets sick, if reimbursement rates drop, if his hospital cuts hours, if there's another pandemic, he is immediately underwater. He's making $300,000 a year, and he is, functionally, paycheck to paycheck. Why do smart people sign up for this math? It comes back to what I'd call the stress spending cycle. Medicine is brutal. 81% of physicians report feeling overworked or burned out. When you work an 80-hour week dealing with life and death decisions, you come home emotionally depleted. You don't have the mental bandwidth to comparison shop, to negotiate prices, to think carefully about whether each purchase is actually worth it. You want convenience. You want comfort. You want anything that makes the next 12 hours feel less brutal than the last 12. This leads to what I'd call soothing spending. You order the expensive takeout because you're too tired to cook. You book the luxury resort vacation because you don't just want to experience a new place, you want to escape your reality. You buy the expensive car because the commute is the only alone time you get all day, and you want that pod to feel like a sanctuary. You drink the $18 cocktail at dinner because you earned it. This is the "I earned it" trap. And to be fair, you did earn it. You worked enormously hard for the money. But by spending that money on fixed comforts to soothe your stress, you're ensuring you have to keep working that stressful job forever to pay for the comforts that soothe the stress. It's a perfect closed loop. The stress requires the comforts require the stressful job. The stressful job creates the stress. Around and around. Breaking the cycle requires a hard rule on fixed obligations. The rule is brutally simple. Never upgrade a fixed cost immediately after a raise. When your income jumps, your fixed expenses must stay flat for at least 12 months. You can buy a nice dinner. That's a one-time variable cost. You can buy a new pair of shoes. You can take a vacation. Those are flexible. What you cannot do is sign a contract. No new mortgage, no new car lease, no new private school enrollment, no new gym membership in a fancier club, no new house cleaner on a weekly schedule. This 12-month cooling-off period breaks the emotional link between "I'm stressed and I got a raise" and "I'm going to lock myself into a more expensive life." It forces you to prove you can save the surplus first. And here's the part that catches most people off guard. After a year of saving the difference, the impulse to upgrade usually fades on its own. You realize the smaller house is fine. The cash growing in your investment accounts feels better than granite countertops would have. Your nervous system finally got the rest it needed, and you stopped needing to buy your way out of fatigue. Now, most personal finance content tells you to focus on the small stuff. Stop buying coffee, cancel Netflix, clip coupons. I'm going to tell you the opposite. Buy the coffee, keep Netflix. The reason doctors and high earners go broke has nothing to do with $5 purchases. It's entirely driven by 3 specific decisions that act as status symbols. Get these 3 wrong, and no amount of latte skipping will save you. Get them right, and you can spend whatever you want on lattes for the rest of your life. The 3 levers that dictate your financial destiny as a high earner are your house, your car, and your kids' schooling. These aren't just expenses. They're badges of rank. There's immense pressure to signal your status to your peers. If you're a surgeon, you're expected to drive a certain caliber of car into the hospital parking lot. If you live in a certain zip code, you're expected to send your kids to the private school down the street. There's a name in psychology for this: mimetic desire. We unconsciously want what our peers have, not because we genuinely want it, but because they have it. We assume they're wanting it means it's worth wanting. Many doctors live beyond their means, simply to chase the perceived expectations of what a physician's lifestyle should look like. You aren't just buying a car. You're buying social acceptance from a peer group whose approval costs you 15 years of compounding wealth. Let's look at the car specifically. A standard reliable car might cost $30,000. A doctor's car, a luxury SUV, or a sports sedan might cost $90,000. Over a 5-year period, with insurance, premium gas, and accelerated depreciation, the luxury car costs effectively double or triple the standard car. The signaling premium isn't 20%, it's 200%, paid out monthly for the rest of your driving life. Now apply that math to housing. $1 million mortgage at current interest rates is crushing. But the mortgage is just the entry fee. Property taxes can run $20,000 to $30,000 a year on a doctor's house in a top school district. Maintenance on a 5,000 square foot home runs $10,000 to $15,000 a year on a normal year, and $25,000 the year you need a new roof. Heating, cooling, and utilities are roughly double what they'd be in a smaller home. The bigger the house, the more it quietly demands every single month. Then there's private school. $20,000 to $40,000 per kid per year, paid with after-tax dollars. To pay a $30,000 tuition bill, you need to earn roughly $50,000 gross. With 3 kids in private school, that's $150,000 of pre-tax income gone before you've bought a single textbook. When you stack house, car, and school, you've accounted for 80% of your take-home pay before you've bought groceries. Deep down, this spending is often driven by imposter syndrome. Physicians are high achievers who are terrified of failure or being seen as incompetent. Displaying wealth is a shortcut to communicating, "I made it. I belong here. I am competent. Look at my driveway." It shields the ego. It's uncomfortable to be the high earner driving a 10-year-old Toyota into the doctor's parking lot. People wonder if you're struggling. They wonder why your car doesn't match your income. That social friction is real, and ignoring it requires an unusually strong internal compass. But here's the irony almost nobody talks about. The colleagues flashing the most expensive cars are usually the ones most stressed about money. They're financing their status. They're a missed paycheck away from the entire structure unraveling. By copying them, you aren't copying their wealth. You're copying their anxiety. You're playing a game where the prize is golden handcuffs. The fix is to reframe what you're actually buying. Instead of asking, "What does a doctor drive?" ask, "What does this car cost me in freedom?" Price things in terms of work units. If a luxury car lease costs you 2 extra overnight on-call shifts a month, is the leather worth being awake at 3 in the morning, away from your family, signing into another patient encounter? Usually the answer is no. This is what's called values-based spending. You decide to opt out of the status game. You can be the eccentric surgeon with the old Volvo and wear it like a badge of honor. That old car isn't a sign of poverty. It's a sign that you don't have to pick up extra shifts unless you genuinely want to. We've talked about the trap. Now I want to show you the way out, with 2 specific people on the same income. Dr. A is the typical spender we just walked through. $350,000 salary, tight monthly cash flow, saving maybe 5% of his income, mostly through reluctant 401k contributions. His green income line shoots up dramatically. His red spending line chases it relentlessly. The gap between them, the net worth wedge, is razor thin. Dr. B makes the exact same $350,000 salary. Same hospital, same specialty, same year of training. But Dr. B looks at her residency when she lived comfortably on $60,000 a year, and she does a specific calculation. She decides she can comfortably live on $120,000 a year as an attending. She doubles her lifestyle from residency, which actually feels luxurious to her after years of scarcity. But she caps it there. Her spending line goes flat. It stops rising even when her income keeps drifting up. Meanwhile, her income line keeps climbing every year. The gap between her 2 lines becomes a massive, widening wedge. She's saving and investing roughly $200,000 a year. That's almost $17,000 a month flowing into index funds, taxable brokerage accounts, real estate equity, and aggressive student loan payoff. In the first year, the difference between Dr. A and Dr. B is noticeable. By year 5, thanks to compound interest, Dr. B's net worth line is going parabolic. It creates what investors call a J-curve of wealth. By year 10, the gap is genuinely staggering. Dr. A is carrying maybe $150,000 in net assets after a decade of practice. Dr. B has a net worth approaching $2.5 million. But here's the part that almost nobody points out. Dr. B's wealth advantage isn't just that she has more money, it's that she needs less money to be free. Because her spending line is permanently lower, her retirement target, the number she needs to walk away from medicine forever, is also dramatically lower. She's attacking a smaller enemy with a vastly bigger army. Dr. A might need $10 million saved to sustain the lifestyle he's locked himself into. Dr. B might only need $3 million to sustain her quieter, simpler version of the same career. And since she's saving roughly 10 times as much as Dr. A every year, she hits her freedom number in 7 to 10 years instead of 30 to 40. The graph shows you something that contradicts almost every cultural assumption about wealth. Rich isn't about the height of the green income line. It's about the width of the wedge between income and spending. That white space on the chart, that's what your freedom is actually made of. So how do you execute Dr. B's strategy without relying on willpower? You don't use willpower. You use automation. You set up your finances so that the wedge money never hits your checking account. The savings come out of payroll directly into a 401k, a Roth IRA, a brokerage account, and aggressive student loan principal payments. You literally hide the money from yourself before you can decide to spend it. Then you learn to run your life on the post-savings amount left over. If the money isn't in your checking account, you can't impulsively buy a heated driveway with it. You artificially create scarcity in the only place that can be tempted. You make yourself feel slightly broke in your day-to-day account while your net worth quietly explodes in the background. It is psychological warfare conducted against your own worst impulses, and it is the only strategy that works at scale across an entire career. There's one final objection I get every time I make videos like this. Andy, I don't want to live like a miser. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I want to enjoy my money. You should enjoy your money. I genuinely mean that. But there's a profound difference between enjoying your life and financing a lifestyle. One brings joy. The other brings obligation. The ultimate luxury for a high earner isn't a Porsche, it's autonomy. It's the ability to say no. When you keep your fixed costs low, you are buying the option to walk away from any job, any boss, any specialty, any institution that no longer fits the life you want to live. You are buying the ability to work part-time. You are buying the ability to take a sabbatical when a parent gets sick. You are buying the ability to switch into a less lucrative but more meaningful subspecialty without your entire financial life collapsing. In medicine, burnout is rampant and getting worse. The doctors who are happiest aren't the ones with the biggest houses. They're the ones who have what's affectionately called FU money. They can practice on their own terms because they don't need the next paycheck to cover a $10,000 mortgage and a $4,000 private school bill. They have decoupled their survival from their employer. That is what real wealth actually is. Try this exercise the next time you want to buy a luxury item. Calculate its cost in freedom units. If you make $1,000 a day after taxes and you want a $60,000 boat, that boat costs 60 days of your life. It costs 2 months of waking up early, dealing with stress, missing time with your family, and showing up for shifts you'd rather skip. Is the boat worth 2 months of your life? Maybe. If you genuinely love boating and your kids will use it every weekend for 15 years, go ahead. But for most status purchases, the watch, the third car, the unnecessary kitchen renovation, the trade-off isn't worth it once you frame it that way. When you start pricing things in days of life lost rather than dollars, your spending line naturally flattens out. You realize most things are simply too expensive in terms of time. The dollars you can earn back. The time you cannot. The goal of all this, the graph, the wedge, the delayed gratification, the cooling off period, is not to die with the biggest pile of money. The goal is to reach what's called the crossover point as fast as possible. The crossover point is the moment when the income from your investments exceeds your annual spending. Once you cross that line, working becomes optional. The job becomes a choice instead of a requirement. For Dr. B, that might happen in her mid-40s. For Dr. A, it might never happen. Same salary, same career, 2 completely different relationships with the rest of their lives. Being a doctor, or any other high earner, is a privilege. It hands you a shovel big enough to dig yourself out of any hole, or deep enough to bury yourself in one of your own making. The choice is entirely defined by the gap between your two lines. Here's the summary in one sentence. Lifestyle inflation is why high-earning professionals feel broke. As income rises, spending rises in parallel, leaving net worth flat. The fix is to separate the lines deliberately. Cap your spending. Let your income rise. Shovel the difference into investments and debt elimination. Avoid the big three traps: the house, the car, and the status signaling. And remember that the most expensive thing you can ever buy is a lifestyle that requires you to keep working forever to pay for it. The doctor in your city, the one earning $400,000 a year with $640 in his checking account, isn't there because he's bad with money. He's there because nobody ever showed him the graph. He never saw the wedge. He let the green and red lines glue themselves together for 13 straight years. And now he's trapped inside a life he never quite chose, paying for a version of himself he's not sure he ever wanted to be. You don't have to be that doctor. You don't have to be the high-income engineer or the over-leveraged executive either. The math is exactly the same in every direction. The wedge is the wealth. Everything else is just a story we tell ourselves about why this year's lifestyle upgrade was different. It wasn't.